Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Let me take you through the whole story. It was a sunny morning and I was gearing up for an exciting cross-country trip with my trusty pickup and a massive RV trailer hitched to it. The journey was long, so it meant I needed a lot of gas to keep my ride going. I pulled into the gas station, which had a whopping 15 pumps, and I took my place at pump number 5. As someone who frequently pulled a hefty RV, I was used to pumping a lot of gas. So I decided to head into the station steward to pay upfront for the fuel. I figured it was more efficient to pay inside and grab a cold soda while I was at it. I returned to my truck ready to start pumping when I noticed a commotion on the other side of the pump. A woman was trying to insert the hose from my pump into her car, which was parked on the other side. I couldn't believe my eyes and I quickly asked her, "What do you think you're doing?" Her response was utterly baffling. "I'm pumping the gas I paid for, but you parked in front of my pump." I hit the emergency button on the pump and ensured it was turned off. This lady, however, wasn't going to let this go quietly. She began yelling at me, demanding that I move my truck so she could fill up her car. I tried to explain that I had been here first, prepaid for my gas, and even had a receipt to prove it. But it seemed like logic was not her strong suit. The more I tried to reason with her, the louder she became. The store employees, probably realizing that the situation was spiraling out of control, called the local police for assistance. Time seemed to crawl as I waited for the authorities to arrive, and it felt like an hour, but it was probably more like 15 or 20 minutes. When the police finally showed up, the woman was still adamant that she had paid for the gas on pump number 5, and I had blocked her way by pulling in front of it while I had allegedly run inside to grab a bottle of soda. To settle this dispute, I handed the police officer my prepaid receipt, showing that I had paid for close to 140 US gallons of gas. This lady's response was far from rational. She shouted that I had fabricated the receipt, claiming that I had been drinking and attempting to steal her gas. The police officers weren't about to take anyone's word for it. They decided to investigate further. They questioned the store employees, reviewed the security camera footage, and established that I was indeed the purchaser of the gas. The evidence was pretty clear-cut, but the lady remained unrelenting in her claims. She continued to accuse me of drinking and driving, which was ludicrous because I had no alcohol in my system, and demanding my arrest for trying to steal her gas. The situation was becoming more surreal by the minute. One of the officers asked the woman the million-dollar question, where she was planning to put all that gas in her small car. Her response was equally absurd. She said she intended to flip up her car and get her change. It was almost as if she thought gas stations worked like a piggy bank. At this point, it was clear to everyone except the lady that she was in the wrong. The police, despite having dealt with a bizarre situation, had to follow their protocol. They decided to conduct a field sobriety test on me, partly due to the lady's unfounded claims. Again, she accused me of faking the test, which quite frankly made no sense. But in the end, the evidence spoke for itself. The lady was arrested for attempted theft over $500, the value of the gas I had prepaid for, making false claims to a police officer and disturbing the peace. Finally, I could get on with my journey. The gas station manager, probably feeling sympathetic for me, even brought me a free A&W root beer to make up for the ridiculous situation I had found myself in. As I finally left the gas station and hit the open road, I couldn't help but shake my head in disbelief at the entitlement and absurdity I had just witnessed. It was a bizarre start to my cross-country trip, but at least it made for a story to remember. The story goes back to February 2009 when I was a college student juggling a full-time job and a full course load. Life was hectic to say the least. But amidst all the chaos, one incident unfolded that turned me into an unlikely protagonist in a tale of revenge. It was a crisp February morning and I had just finished my chemistry lab at college. Afterward, I hopped into my car and headed to my workplace, only to realize my wallet had vanished from my purse. Panic set in as I retraced my steps mentally, remembering I'd used it that morning and it was nowhere to be found. And that's when a sinking feeling in my gut told me something was amiss. I acted quickly. I reached for my phone and called my credit card company, and as if the universe had conspired against me, there it was. A recent transaction at a local bar for a hefty tab. Any ordinary person might have declared it fraud and given up on the other items and their stolen wallet. Not me. I was determined to get even. My first call was to the police to report the theft. They told me to contact a different jurisdiction since my school was on a reservation. That led to another frustrating call to the reservation police, who stated it wasn't their jurisdiction either. The reason? I couldn't be certain the loss had occurred on campus. My heart sank as I realized I was on my own in this pursuit of justice. But I was a people person, having worked in retail for years, which gave me the edge in communication skills. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. The next call I made was to a restaurant where my credit card had been used. I described the situation to the person who answered and gave her the last digits of my credit card. Fate was on my side that day because a woman on the other end happened to be the server who'd handled the transaction. She broke the rules by sharing information she shouldn't have, but she sympathized with my plight. She revealed that the tab was sky high because a thief had left a massive tip. The story they had spun was that it was a wife treating her husband to lunch and drinks, hence the female name on a card. But the truth emerged. He was with two friends who had used their own credit cards to pay for their food and drinks. My heart raced as she spilled even more details, including the name on that second credit card. I thanked her, hanging up with a sense of accomplishment. Now things were getting even shadier. I decided to delve into my workplace customer database to hunt for a phone number linked to the peculiarly named innocent guy who had paid for his own meal while dining with the thief. The pieces of this puzzle were falling into place. A few days later, I steeled myself to make the most intimidating call of my life. I dialed the innocent guy's number, presenting myself as a private investigator, and I calmly warned him that if he didn't provide the name and phone number of the person he'd eaten with at that restaurant, he could be considered an accomplice to the crime. He hesitated, expressing his fear and stating that he wanted to consult his lawyer before speaking to me. And I assured him that as a private investigator, I would ensure he faced no legal consequences if he cooperated. In the end, he gave me a name but no phone number. It was a small victory, but I was getting closer to the elusive thief. Without the thief's phone number in hand, I turned to social media for assistance. The name I had led me to a local private profile on Facebook, and this was during the stone age of Facebook, and users could still display banners, which were essentially a form of status update. I scrutinized this profile and found a post lamenting a chemistry lab test, a test that I, too, was about to take. I couldn't recognize his face, but I was convinced that he was the one who had stolen my wallet from the lab. With a printout of his Facebook page bearing his picture and status in mind, I approached my chemistry teacher. I explained the situation, my heart pounding with excitement, and he examined the picture and confirmed that the student sat at the corner of my table during the lab. It all made sense now. He had swiped my wallet from my purse while we were engrossed in our experiments. My chemistry teacher and I reached out to the campus police. They agreed to come to our class during the lab discreetly to apprehend the thief. The plan was set in motion. The best part of this entire scheme was that the thief was already on probation for some prior misdeed. This time he wasn't getting off easy. When the campus police arrived, they arrested him right in the middle of the class. The shock and embarrassment on his face were priceless and definitely a fitting end to his crime spree. I wasn't involved in his subsequent legal proceedings, but I did explain my tactics to the reservation police, who patted me on the back for my tenacity. The story didn't end there though. To add the icing on a cake, I received compensation checks from the thief's present for a measly sum of $2 each until my claimed $50 fossil wallet loss was remedied. As I've grown older, I hope the thief has turned his life around. I didn't remember much about him from our chemistry class, but I was a dedicated student with my own path to follow. We all make mistakes, especially in our youth, but it seemed that his early years were marked by a string of poor choices. A look at his name in public records since then shows that he hasn't quite found the right path yet. So I, 35 female, live in a one-bedroom apartment with just my dog, my cat and myself. One of my friends, 33 female, that I have known for about 20 plus years, recently broke up with her partner, 39 male. She lived in his home that he bought alone before they got together. They were together for about 5 years and I'm not sure what caused the breakup, but my friend asked to stay at my place on the couch for just a few days until she got her own place. Here's a problem though. I told her she could stay 1 week and then she needed to be out. My place isn't that big and she sleeps dang near all day. I hated being forced to stay in my room until she woke up. I couldn't even make a cup of coffee in my living room until she woke up, otherwise she would scream at me. After the week I woke her up and told her she needs to clean up her mess. She's very messy and, well, go. It wasn't until about 10 AM that I woke her up, but I was done. She started screaming at me to get out of her room, my living room by the way, and leave her alone. Where I live, unless they live at a residence for 30 plus days, I have every right to kick them out. I started cleaning up her stuff and told her she had 1 hour before I called the police. And she is now telling all our mutual friends that I said she could fully move in and then changed my mind. Everything that we talked about was either over the phone or in person, so I have no proof of our agreement. Our friends are 50-50 at the time. Should I have given her more time to find a safe place to stay, or should I have made a legal agreement on paper before she stayed? I do feel bad, but it's my place and I shouldn't be forced to stay in my room until she chooses to wake up. Edit. Thank you everyone for the comments. I sent a group message to everyone including those who don't agree with me and I told them that I'm sorry for how they feel, but I do not have a room for somebody to move in. I also said that I'm not going to hide in my room just so someone can sleep the day away. I have a dog that I have to take out to go potty and I also like my morning coffee and breakfast. A lot of them have apologized since then. Edit 2. Just so everyone knows, I didn't threaten with the police or only give her an hour until after she started throwing and breaking my things. I also did remind her daily she only had a week and asked if she had made other arrangements yet. And now with some comments on the post. Someone saying, "You're not the jerk." She sounds obnoxious and toxic and I have an idea or two why her relationship ended. That any of her friends think she might be in a right claiming you offered for her to stay forever in a one-bedroom place sounds like a joke. Get her to leave and go make yourself a coffee whenever you damn well please. Another commenter adds, "You're not the jerk. You gave her a week and she agreed to it. She knew the deal before sleeping on your couch, and to disrespect you when you ask her to clean up after herself? Yeah, that is not okay. Do not give her any more time because then she will have one because she gets what she wants and that is to stay and she will believe that she can treat you like that and get away with it. If your friends take her side in things without listening to your side of it, then they may not be worth it." A third commenter goes with, "Oh my god, not the jerk. What a nightmare human. You tried to do something nice and she used you hard. That's not a very good friend if she's that inconsiderate and delusional." Let me start off with a backstory. I come from a long line of firefighters, and so when a few fire trucks from the fire company, which the men in my immediate family used to volunteer at, came up for sale, my grandfather bought them and fixed them up. However, my grandpa had a townhouse and only had just enough room to park them in his backyard, but not enough land to build a building and store them. When my dad bought his property with a few acres, it was decided that a barn would be built to store the fire trucks on my dad's property. This property didn't have a house and used to be designated as farmland. Now we get into the story. When my dad wanted to build a house in this little bit of woods right off of a new neighborhood, on land he bought, he had to get the government to rezone it to be residential. This isn't that difficult, just holding a court session to make sure nobody has any legitimate objections to the procedure. However, for some reason, one more neighbor was just too much for a decent chunk of the existing neighborhood, So a bunch of them came up with every dumb reason as to why that land had to be left alone. The woman, who will feature prominently later in the story and we will call Mrs. B from now on, suggested that the land would be much better suited for horses to frolic in. Nobody in the neighborhood knew of anybody in the town who owned horses, and there wasn't enough land for horses to legally be allowed to live upon it. So after about 2 weeks of this and similar nonsense, the court rezoned the land and finally, construction of the house began. As soon as the trees were cut down, the fire trucks were moved onto the property where the barn would be built once the house was done. Once all the trees were down, my dad built up a barn pile to dispose of all the wood. And before he did, as well as him being a firefighter himself, called the fire department to let them know what he was doing. And they said it's alright because he was right in the window of land where no permit would be needed, and a big bonfire also wasn't a problem. So he lit it up. Soon Mrs. B comes strutting, phone in hand, yelling at my dad that she's calling the fire department. He tells her he's with the fire department and in case she's blind, there is 2 fire trucks already on the property just in case. They were antiques but they'd still get the job done and were ready to. She continues screaming, so Dad gets on the phone and calls the fire department once again, asking if anyone has called to complain about a fire at his property, to which they respond saying no fires have been reported that day at all yet. So Dad hangs up and starts calling Mrs. B the liar that she is, to go back to her house and quit disturbing us. We have a few more interactions like this over the process of us moving in, but nothing deters us, and so finally a barn is built for the trucks. Eventually things die down in regards to the neighbors and we make good friends with about half the neighborhood. Now, a year or so after the barn is built, another local fire department my grandpa is involved with is working on selling one of their old trucks, a giant Ford Louisville model, basically a semi-truck with a fire truck body. They don't have space to store since its replacement has come in, and until they find a buyer they need a place to store it, so my grandpa offers to store it in our barn. Part of this deal involves us running the truck around once a week because letting the truck sit too long could cause damage. Well, during this time, Mrs. B starts having a ton of yard sales. We noticed a few people parking on our lawn during this. Not like one tire on the grass or something, no. There are people using our yard like it's a parking lot. We always try to ask people to move because it's our lawn after all, but yet it keeps happening. One day, we learn why Mrs. B keeps telling people to park on our lawn. We figure a good solution to this is to put up a sign that's been spray painted to say no parking in big black letters, clearly legible so everyone knows. Our lawn stops being used as a parking lot for a bit. Until one day, Mrs. B decided to march on over, rip the sign off its post, rip the post out of the ground. It was all temporary, so it was just temporarily duct taped together and pushed into the ground a little, and proceed to throw into what's left of the woods behind our house. My parents were furious, and people began parking in the lawn the way they used to, again the next day. This is when my dad comes up with a genius plan. He puts the sign back up, but he's not done. It's just that time to take the Ford around the neighborhood. My dad has been driving trucks like this since he's had his license, so he knows just how to get it to do what he wants it to. He takes it out, goes up to one end of the neighborhood, turns around and starts heading back. This truck had a 10-speed manual transmission, and in this half-mile long stretch of road he got the diesel motor into 8th, waited until just before he reached Mrs. B's house, and by the time he had reached the edge of her property the truck was in 3rd. Now this truck was diesel powered, and all that slowing down makes the truck roll some serious coal, with the exhaust pointed straight at the yard sale on a relatively calm day. Needless to say, while nothing looked all that bad, maybe a little darker than before, the worst part was the smell. Diesel fuel stinks really bad when it's been coal rolled. Within a few days, everything left from the yard sale was packed up into garbage bags and was sitting next to her trash can. She might have tried to call the police, but would the cops even acknowledge her if she told them that her neighbor's fire truck drove by spewing black smoke all over her yard sale items, ruining them? I don't think so. After this, not only did she leave us alone, she stopped having yard sales altogether. To point being, since Mrs. B was horrible to us that whole time we've owned property in the neighborhood, we cost her hundreds, if not thousands of dollars she could have made at that yard sale, and any others she might have had in the future.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.